In Peru, police repression left 20 people killed so far after the executive headed by Dina Boluarte and the Congress reached an agreement to decree a curfew. Argentina's Supreme Court of Justice sentenced social leader Milagro Sala to 13 years in prison, prompting the condemnation of social groups who support Sala. And Moscow believes that the United States doesn't have the means to destroy Russia, while Washington announces the continuation of its plan to train troops in Europe. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Now we begin with the news. In Peru, violence escalated after Dina Boluarte's government and the Congress decreed a curfew and a state of exception. During the state of emergency, constitutional rights as inviolability of the home, freedom of transit through the national territory, freedom of assembly, and personal liberty and security are suspended. These allowances have led to a violence escalation by the army that has already left 20 dead to date, 9 of them in the last few hours and 52 wounded in Ayacucho alone. Human rights organizations and even the United Nations mission in the country have expressed concern about the disproportionate increase and the use of repression in the context of the curfew. Human rights defenders in Lima have also denounced, in addition to the violence, arbitrary detentions by police forces. And the former president, Pedro Castillo, took to Twitter to issue an alert message in which he informed of arbitrary plans against the Peruvian people. In the first tweet, President Castillo alerted Peruvian people regarding the visit of the U.S. ambassador to the government palace as a backstage move and not in favor of the people. The former head of state also sounded the alarm on the massacres and genocides against the protesters under the complicity of the national and right-wing dominated media. In his tweet, Pedro Castillo also warned of the hidden interests of the political elite to seize the nation's resources, especially the mining ones. At the same time, Supreme Judge Juan Carlos Sheckley sentenced former Peruvian President Pedro Castillo to 18 months in preventive detention, charging him with rebellion. The judge argued that the sentence was applied after finding all the elements of conviction in order to proceed to an eventual subsequent conviction of more than 4 years in prison and procedural danger. Likewise, Sheckley also ordered the summons with restrictions and rules of conduct for the ex-premier Aníbal Torres, who is under inquiry for the same case. In this context, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights denounced the increase of violence and the repression in the midst of the political crisis that the country is going through. Through a communiqué, the organization called for the implementation of UN standards on peaceful protest in order to protect human rights and prevent the increase of violence. Now we will move on to other topics. In Mexico, health authorities reported that with the death of 2 women on Thursday, the number of victims of aseptic meningitis in the state of Durango has reached a total of 25. The Durango Health Secretariat indicated that there are now 73 confirmed cases of the disease and that the patients are under specialized supervision. The entity also explained that 3 patients were referred to the National Institute of Neurology and Neurosurgery in Mexico City in order to perform surgical procedures in better conditions and to avoid any complications. The investigations show that all the patients have in common the performance of surgical procedures in one of the 4 private hospitals where the cases have been reported. In Ecuador, the Teachers National Union has mobilized throughout the country to protest against the policies of the administration of Guillermo Lasso. One of the main reasons for the protest is the demand for more teachers' quotas for the so-called salary equalization, from which many teachers have been excluded. The Teachers National Union is also demanding from the government to make more resources available for education and to provide better security conditions at schools so that they may resume classes. The Chamber of Deputies of Bolivia approved on Thursday the bill of the General State Budget for next year. With 68 votes in favor, the legislators approved the bill in plenary session. Jerjes Mercado, president of the Chamber of Deputies, pointed out that with the approval of the law, the legislature is giving a positive answer to the Bolivian people. The budget for 2023 foresees a gross domestic product growth of 4.86%, a public investment of more than $4 million, and the payment of social bonuses to preserve the welfare of the most vulnerable population. And the heat wave that has hit Chile this week with record temperatures in some areas and the lack of rainfall have intensified forest fires that have already burned more than 7,000 hectares in the South American nation. Officials confirmed that dozens of people have had to evacuate their homes because of the fire, and the capital Santiago is under a public health alert due to a cloud of smoke. The National Forestry Corporation said firefighters were currently tackling 18 fires concentrated in the country's central region, as well as the smaller number in the south. Among several localities in the Valparaiso region, around 40 homes have been evacuated and a dozen homes have been destroyed. In Argentina, social organizations and human rights advocates rejected the Supreme Court ruling that ratified the 13-year prison sentence for social leader Milagro Sala. The Tupac Amaru indigenous organization denounced that the Supreme Court's decision against the activists showed that democracy in the country is a mere decoration. The organization stated that such actions simulate institutionality so that economic groups and their political representatives can ensure social justice as the inevitable fate of popular majorities. Likewise, the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights pointed out that the Supreme Court had validated the political and judicial persecution against Sala by rejecting an appeal presented by her defense for violations of due process. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday night, the United States Congress passed the annual defense authorization bill worth more than $800 million. The U.S. Senate approved the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023 and sent it to the White House for signature, a week after it went through the House of Representatives. The NDAA authorizes more than $800 million for the Pentagon and $30.3 billion for national security programs within the U.S. Department of Energy. The legislation also increased the top-line authorization level by $45 billion above President Joe Biden's budget request to address the effects of inflation. The bill also included measures to strengthen air and land defense capabilities, cybersecurity, and U.S. support for Ukraine, as well as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. According to data published by the United States Commerce Department, retail sales dropped in November, falling even lower than analysts had estimated. Retail sales decreased 0.6%. It is the largest fall since December 2021 and surpasses the Dow Jones prediction of a 0.3% decline. Consumers pulled back on spending in several retail sectors. Furniture saw a 2.6% drop. Garden centers and building materials ticked down 2.5%. And auto dealers and auto parts sellers saw a 2.3% fall. Online retail sales also ticked downward, dropping 0.9%. Now we move on to other topics. China's National Health Commission rolled out the second COVID-19 vaccine booster shots for high-risk groups and the elderly people over 60 years old. The Commission also said that the time gap between the first and the second booster shots will be 6 months, adding that people who can take the second booster shot will include those with severe existing diseases and those with low immunity. Right before easing its COVID-19 prevention measures earlier this month, the Chinese government pushed to speed up vaccinations for those aged above 60 years. According to official data, people aged 60 and above who have received 2 doses inched up from 85.6% in August to 86.4% in November, while the booster rate rose from 67.8% to 68.2% over the same period.
My first booster shot on February 26th this year. I've come here to get my second booster shot.
We, especially senior citizens, must get vaccinated. It's for our own sake. My husband says inhalable vaccines are better, but I'm coughing a bit today, so I will ask doctors in a while. Maybe I will just get an injection.
And now we move on to other topics. Moscow believes that the United States doesn't have the means to destroy Russia, while Washington announces the continuation of its plan to train troops in Ukraine. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova responded to a statement by the White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Washington's desire to exclude Moscow from the United Nations Security Council. In this regard, Zakharova pointed out that if there were a way to destroy Russia, they will do it instantly, just as if there were a mechanism to seize all the world's natural resources, they will do it quickly from Washington. In that sense, the Russian spokesperson assured that there is no way to destroy her nation, and moreover, Russia is ready to face the U.S. pretensions. And the European Union ambassadors approved the 9th round of sanctions against Russia as leaders gave their green light to an 18 billion euros aid package for Russia. The new sanctions package was finalized by ambassadors on the sidelines of a summit of EU leaders in Brussels. The proposal planned for a further 200 Russian individuals and entities to be hit with asset freezes and travel bans. This included government ministries, lawmakers, regional governors, political parties, and entities, including the armed forces. They joined more than 1,000 individuals and 118 entities already blacklisted. And the Parliament of Slovakia has approved a no-confidence vote against Prime Minister Eduard Heger. The motion was introduced by the Freedom and Solidarity Party. The initiative passed with 78 votes, 2 more than was needed. 20 parliament members opposed the motion and another 2 abstained. Slovak Parliament President Boris Kolar said following the endorsement of this motion against Slovak Prime Minister Heger, it will be possible to call for early elections, which will be held between May and June 2023. According to the polls, such scenario will benefit the left-wing opposition led by the Smer Social Democratic Party. On Friday, Serbia has formally requested NATO to deploy troops in Kosovo on the grounds of protecting the safety of its citizens. According to local media, the authorities have sent the request to the commander of the NATO mission for Kosovo to deploy 1,000 members of its army and police in agreement with the UN Security Council Resolution 1244. The Serbian executive said the measure was unanimously approved, and he emphasized that it is an important decision for the security of Kosovo and the Serbian citizens. On his part, Serbia's foreign minister denounced the Kosovar authorities for their negligence in preventing an escalation of the conflict in the region. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. A big aquarium, described as the largest of its type in the world, burst in the hotel in downtown Berlin, Germany, on Friday, sending more than 200,000 gallons of seawater and more than 1,000 tropical fish cascading through the lobby and onto the street. The force of the blast of water coursing out of the building pushed mangled debris onto the street in front of the hotel. Some guests described the street scattered with dying fish, some of which appeared to have frozen to death by the frigid morning temperatures of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. About 100 firefighters responded at the scene, cordoning off an intersection close to the hotel near the central square of Alexanderplatz. The authorities were checking for structural damage to the building as guests were evacuated, and 2 people were taken to the hospital to treat cuts caused by the shards of glass from the burst tank. And 5 children were among 10 people killed on Friday when a fire broke out in an apartment building in a suburb of the eastern French city of Lyon. Meanwhile, 19 other people were injured and some remain in critical condition. The fire broke out in a 7-story building in the Mas-du-Toureau district in Vol-en-Velin, a town of nearly 50,000 inhabitants located near Lyon. French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said the 5 children who died in the fire were aged 3 to 15. The police also said that nearly 170 firefighters and 65 fire trucks were deployed to the scene. Further information showed 2 firefighters suffered light injuries while battling the blaze, which broke out on the ground floor of a building and spread upwards. Malaysia's fire department said that more than 50 people were feared buried alive after a landslide hit a campsite outside Kuala Lumpur on Friday. Fire department authorities also said that a child and a woman were found dead after the incident in Bhutan Kali, around 31 miles north of the capital. 79 people were believed to have been at the site when the landslide struck. 3 people were injured while rescuers were searching for the estimated 51 missing people. Meanwhile, another 23 people have been rescued. The landslide fell from an estimated height of 30 meters and covered an area of about 0.4 hectares. The campsite is located on an organic farm not far from the Genting Highlands Hill Resort, a popular tourist destination with theme parks and the country's only casino. And amid difficult living conditions for the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, some 90% of refugee families need humanitarian assistance to survive. The information was issued on Friday by the United Nations Refugee Agency, the World Food Programme, and the UN Children's Fund. The statement also said that Syrian children and adolescents are the most affected by Lebanon's economic crisis. The agency's assessment showed that children's nutrition is at stake, with less than half of infants under 5 months of age being exclusively breastfed and only 11% meeting the minimum number of meals and food groups per day. The statement came amid soaring poverty levels across the country, with 80% of households earning less than $300 per month. And Jordanians took to the streets on Friday, and activists called for more protests over fuel price rises that have added to a cost of living squeeze a day after riots in a southern city left one police officer dead. The authorities said the police person was killed on Thursday by a gunshot fired by an unidentified individual when armed forces and officers entered a neighborhood of Man to quell riots. Tensions have mounted in Man and several other cities in southern Jordan, especially after days of truck drivers' strikes protesting high fuel prices and demanding cuts in diesel prices. Meanwhile, sporadic demonstrations continued in Man and in the capital Amman, while activists called for more protests. The Iranian government says they consider the resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on Human Rights in Iran as devoid of legitimacy. In a statement read by Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani, Iranian authorities referred to the resolution entitled Human Rights Situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran as anti-Iranian resolution, and the initiative was approved with 80 votes in favor, 29 against, and 65 abstentions at the United Nations General Assembly. The Iranian diplomat recalled that the resolution had been introduced by Canada with the support of the European Union and the government of Israel, and that it reflects the hypocrisy of its sponsors, for it abuses human rights concepts and values for political purposes. And just as the hearts of millions of fans live the emotions of the Qatar 2022 World Cup, TeleSUR joins this sporting event with From the Field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews, and more to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.